Commander Hyunwoo Park stood at the main window of New Seoul Station and watched the stars. The space station was huge and shaped like a wheel that spun slowly around Earth. Thousands of people lived and worked there. Scientists studied new medicines and technologies. Engineers built better ships and tools. Families raised children who had never walked on a planet's surface. It was peaceful and quiet except for the soft hum of the life support systems. Hyunwoo had been the station commander for 3 years. He was 42 years old with short black hair and kind eyes. The crew respected him because he listened to their problems and made fair decisions. He had joined the space program 20 years ago when Earth first built stations in orbit. Back then, most people thought aliens were just stories in movies. Now humans lived among the stars, but they had never met anyone else. That morning started, like any other morning. Hyunwoo drank his coffee and read reports from the different departments. Chief Engineer Da-Eun Lee sent him updates about the new solar panels. Dr. Min-ho Choi shared data from his biology experiments. Captain Soo-jin Yoon reported that the patrol ships had found nothing unusual during their rounds. Everything was normal, and boring just the way Hyunwoo liked it. Da-Eun Lee worked in the engineering section deep inside the station. She was 35 years old and had been fixing machines since she was a child. Her hometown was Busan on Earth, where her parents still lived. She talked to them every week through video calls. They were proud that their daughter worked in space, but they worried about her safety. Da-eun always told them that space was safer than driving a car on Earth's crowded roads. The first sign that something was wrong came at 11:30 in the morning. The station's computers detected strange readings from the outer solar system. Lieutenant Woo-jin Kim, who monitored the sensors, called Hyunwoo to the control room. The readings showed large objects moving toward Earth, but they appeared and disappeared, like ghosts. The computers could not get a clear picture of what was coming. Dr. Min-ho Choi hurried to the control room when he heard about the readings. He was a thin man with thick glasses who studied life in space. For years he had wondered if humans would ever meet aliens. He had written papers about what alien life might look like and how they might behave. Now his hands shook as he looked at the data. The objects were too big to be asteroids and moved too fast to be natural. Captain Soo-jin Yoon commanded the small fleet of ships that protected the station. She was 28 years old and had graduated first in her class from the Space Academy. Her ships were fast but lightly armed because Earth had never fought a war in space. Soo-jin studied the sensor readings and felt cold fear in her stomach. Whatever was coming toward them was much larger than anything humans had ever built. At 12:15, the objects stopped hiding. Massive ships appeared all around Earth's solar system, like monsters stepping out of shadows. There were dozens of them, each one bigger than New Seoul Station. Their hulls were dark gray with sharp edges and glowing red lights. They did not look like anything humans would build. They looked like weapons designed to kill. The largest ship positioned itself between Earth and the moon. It was so big that it blocked out part of the sun when viewed from the station. Smaller ships spread out in a pattern that surrounded Earth completely. There was no way for human ships to escape or for help to arrive from other colonies. Whoever these aliens were, they had planned this attack carefully. Admiral Bo-ra Kim commanded Earth's defense forces from a base on the moon. She was 50 years old and had fought in the water wars 20 years earlier. She knew about strategy and tactics, but she had never faced an enemy from space. When the alien ships appeared, she immediately sent messages to all human ships and stations. Every captain and commander should prepare for possible combat, but not fire first. Bo-ra hoped that the aliens wanted to talk. The aliens answered her hope quickly. A signal came from the largest ship directed at Earth and all the human stations. The message was in perfect Korean, English, Chinese, and 20 other human languages. Someone or something had been studying humanity for a long time. The voice that spoke was deep and cold like metal scraping against stone. We are the Vorthan Empire. We have conquered 47 worlds and eliminated 15 species that refuse to surrender. Your species will submit to our rule or face complete destruction. You have one rotation of your planet to decide. Choose wisely. The message ended and the alien ships went silent. They did not answer when Admiral Bo-ra tried to respond. They did not move when human patrol ships flew near them. They simply waited like predators watching prey. The silence was Worse than threats because it meant the aliens were confident they would win. On New Sol Station, the crew gathered in the main meeting room. Engineers and scientists sat next to security officers and maintenance workers. Everyone was scared, but no one talked about abandoning the station. Hyunwoo stood at the front of the room and looked at the faces of his people. These were not soldiers trained for war. They were civilians who had come to space to build something better than what existed on Earth. Da-Yun Lee raised her hand and asked the question everyone was thinking. What would happen if Earth surrendered? Would the aliens let humans continue to live and work in space? Would families be allowed to stay together? Would children be safe? Hyunwoo did not have answers because the aliens had not explained what surrender meant. They had only demanded it. Dr. Minho Choi shared what he knew about military conquests throughout human history. Usually the winners killed the leaders and enslaved the survivors. They took the best resources and destroyed anything they could not use. If the aliens followed the same pattern, then surrender would mean the end of human civilization. Everything humans had built would belong to creatures from another world. The debate continued for 2 hours, but reached no conclusion. Some people wanted to fight even if they could not win. Others believed that surrender might save human lives, even if it cost human freedom. A few suggested trying to negotiate with the aliens, but the Vorthons had made it clear they were not interested in compromise. Submit or die were the only choices offered. At 3:30 in the afternoon, the aliens demonstrated why they were confident. 3 beams of brilliant light shot down from the largest ship and struck targets on Earth. The beams lasted only 5 seconds, but when they ended, 3 cities had been completely destroyed. Mumbai disappeared in a flash of white fire. Lagos became a crater of melted glass. Mexico City turned into a cloud of ash that rose into the atmosphere like a nuclear explosion. 20 million people died in those 5 seconds. Da-Yun Lee watched her home country of South Korea and cried because she thought Busan might be next. Dr. Minho Choi stared at the screens and realized that the aliens possessed weapons that could destroy planets. Captain Soo Jin-yoon calculated how long it would take the alien ships to wipe out every human city and came up with an answer of less than 1 hour. The alien message came again immediately after the demonstration. This time, the voice sounded pleased, like a teacher whose students had finally learned an important lesson. Your species has seen our power. 24 hours remain for your decision. Choose surrender and live as our servants. Choose resistance. And join the 15 species we have eliminated. There will be no further warnings. Hyunwoo looked around the meeting room and saw something unexpected in the faces of his crew. Instead of terror, he saw anger. Instead of despair, he saw determination. The aliens had made a mistake by killing innocent people to prove their strength. They had awakened something in humanity that they did not understand, something that had helped humans survive ice ages and plagues and wars throughout their history, something that made them fight harder when the odds were worst. The station's communication system buzzed with incoming messages from Earth and human colonies throughout the solar system. Government leaders were meeting in emergency sessions. Military commanders were gathering their forces. Scientists were analyzing the alien technology. But most importantly, ordinary people were making a choice that would surprise the Vorthon Empire. They were choosing to fight. Fleet Admiral Thexkar of the Vorthon Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship and waited for humanity's surrender. He was 8 feet tall with gray skin and 4 arms that ended in claws. His species had evolved on a world where only the strongest survived, and they had brought that philosophy to the stars. In 300 years of conquest, no species had ever chosen to fight after seeing Vorthon power demonstrated. The human response should have arrived hours ago. Thexkar had destroyed their cities to show them the futility of resistance. Every other species had begged for mercy within moments of witnessing such destruction. The humans should be transmitting their surrender and preparing to serve their new masters. Instead, the communication channels remained silent, except for scattered military chatter that his translators could not fully decode. Commander Hyunwoo received the first signals from Earth at dawn on the 2nd day. Admiral Bo-Ra. Kim's face appeared on the main screen of New Sol Station looking tired but determined. She had been in meetings with world leaders for 18 straight hours, and the results of those meetings would shock the Vorthon Empire. Instead of surrender, Earth was declaring total war against the alien invaders. Every human government had voted unanimously for resistance. The African Union, the European Federation, the Asian Alliance, and the American states had put aside their differences to face the alien threat together. More importantly, the colonies on Mars and the mining stations in the asteroid belt had volunteered to join the fight. Humanity would stand together or fall together, but they would not kneel before alien conquerors. Da-Eun Lee listened to the war declaration and felt her heart racing. She was an engineer, not a soldier, but she knew that every human would have to become a warrior if they wanted to survive. She thought about her parents in Busan and promised herself that the aliens would pay for threatening her family. She began making plans to turn the station's industrial equipment into weapons that could hurt the Vorthan ships. Dr. Minho Choi was already working on understanding the alien technology. The debris from the 3 destroyed cities had scattered across the upper atmosphere, and some pieces had been recovered by high-altitude aircraft. The metal was unlike anything humans had ever seen, but it followed the same laws of physics. If humans could understand how Vorthan weapons worked, they might be able to find weaknesses to exploit. The first human attack came 6 hours after the war declaration. Captain Soo-Jin Yoon led 12 patrol ships in a desperate charge against a Vorthan destroyer that was scanning the dark side of the moon. The human ships were tiny compared to the alien vessel, but they moved faster and could change direction more quickly. Soo-Jin hoped that speed and surprise might give them an advantage. The Vorthan destroyer detected the approaching human ships and turned to face them. Its weapons were designed to destroy large targets at long range, not to hit small, fast-moving fighters. The first volley of alien fire missed completely as Soo-Jin's pilots scattered in different directions. The second volley destroyed 2 human ships, but the remaining 10 reached the alien vessel and began their attack. Soo-Jin had armed her ships with nuclear missiles taken from Earth's old military stockpiles. The weapons were primitive compared to Vorthan technology, but they carried enough explosive power to damage alien armor. 8 missiles struck the destroyer's hull and detonated in flashes of atomic fire. The alien ship staggered and began leaking atmosphere from dozens of holes in its side. On the Vorthan flagship, Admiral Thexkar watched the attack with growing confusion. The human ships fought like insects swarming around a predator. They accepted terrible losses to achieve minor victories. 3 more human vessels died as the destroyer's automated defenses finally adjusted to target smaller objects, but the remaining ships continued their assault until the alien vessel exploded. Young Soo Kang was a cargo pilot who had volunteered to fight when the war began. He had no military training, and his ship was designed to carry supplies, not weapons. But when he saw the Vorthan destroyer start to retreat after losing half its armor, he made a decision that would become legend among human forces. He rammed his cargo ship directly into the alien vessel's engine core. The explosion of Young-Soo's ship triggered a chain reaction that destroyed the entire Vorthan destroyer. The alien vessel broke apart in a brilliant flash that could be seen from Earth. Young-Soo died instantly, but his sacrifice proved that humans could hurt their enemies. More importantly, it showed the Vorthans that they were fighting a species that valued victory more than individual survival. Admiral Thexkar contacted his home fleet and requested immediate reinforcements. The humans were not behaving like any species he had encountered. They fought with a combination of careful planning and reckless courage that made them unpredictable and dangerous. Worse, they seemed to learn from each battle and adapt their tactics to exploit Vorthan weaknesses. Physicist Jae-Min Han worked in a secret laboratory buried deep beneath the Sahara Desert. He had spent 10 years developing experimental weapons based on quantum mechanics and exotic matter. The military had considered his work too dangerous to deploy, but the alien invasion changed everything. Admiral Bora gave him permission to use any weapon that might hurt the Vorthans regardless of the risks. Jaemin's quantum mines looked like ordinary pieces of space debris, but they contained compressed black holes that could tear apart matter at the subatomic level. He had hidden dozens of them throughout the solar system disguised as asteroids and broken satellites. When Vorthan ships approached the mines, they would detonate and create tiny rifts in space-time that could damage even alien armor. The first quantum mine exploded when a Vorthan cruiser tried to destroy one of Jupiter's moons. The alien commander thought he was firing at a worthless rock, but the mine detonated and opened a hole in reality itself. The cruiser was pulled partially into the rift and torn in half by gravitational forces that no ship could withstand. The surviving crew escaped in life pods, but their vessel was completely destroyed. More mines detonated over the following days as Vorthon's ships stumbled into Jamin's hidden traps. The aliens began to realize that the solar system was much more dangerous than they had anticipated. Every piece of debris might be a weapon. Every harmless-looking object might explode without warning. The humans had turned their own territory into a maze of deadly surprises. Dae-Yun Lee led teams of engineers in converting civilian spacecraft into warships. Cargo haulers received armor plating and missile launchers. Passenger transports became troop carriers filled with human volunteers, eager to fight. Even research vessels were armed with experimental weapons designed by scientists who had never built instruments of war. The human fleet grew larger every day as more ships joined the resistance. The Vorthans responded by attacking human industrial centers to prevent further ship construction. They destroyed orbital factories and mining stations with precision strikes that killed thousands of workers. But for every facility they eliminated, 2 more began producing weapons and ammunition. Humans were rebuilding faster than the aliens could destroy, and they were learning to hide their most important operations. Dr. Min-Ho Choi made a crucial discovery while examining wreckage from destroyed Vorthon ships. The aliens used biological components in their technology that suggested they were not the original designers of their weapons. Computer analysis revealed traces of DNA from at least 3 different species embedded in Vorthon equipment. The Empire was built on conquered technology stolen from other civilizations. More disturbing was what Min-Ho found in the Vorthon data cores. References to something called the Devourers appeared repeatedly in alien communications. These beings seemed to control the Vorthon Empire from behind the scenes and demanded regular tribute in the form of resources and captured populations. The Vorthons were not conquerors, but servants of something even more dangerous. Commander Hyun-woo received reports from battles throughout the solar system and began to see patterns in human tactics. They were not winning through superior technology or greater numbers. They were winning because they refused to accept defeat, even when facing impossible odds. Every human ship that died took alien vessels with it. Every destroyed station was quickly rebuilt. Every lost battle taught them lessons for the next fight. The war had been raging for 6 days when Admiral Thexkar received new orders from his superiors. The Devourers were growing impatient with the delays on Earth and threatened to send their own forces if the Vorthon Empire could not complete the conquest quickly. Thexkar realized that he was fighting for his own survival as much as for victory over humanity. Captain Soo Jin-yoon had lost half her original fleet, but gained 3 times as many ships from volunteers and converted civilian vessels. She led the expanded human armada in increasingly bold attacks against Vorthon positions. Her pilots had learned to work together like schools of fish, confusing predators with coordinated movement and sudden direction changes. The battle for Earth's orbital space intensified as both sides committed more resources to the fight. Vorthan. Reinforcements arrived from conquered worlds while human ships emerged from hidden bases throughout the solar system. General Yoonji Park had spent her entire career studying military history, and she knew that winning wars required more than courage and determination. She needed to find weaknesses in the Vorthon Empire that could be exploited by human forces. From her command center deep beneath Seoul, she analyzed every piece of data collected from alien ships and communications, looking for patterns that might reveal how to defeat a superior enemy. Yoonji was 45 years old and had commanded peacekeeping forces in 3 different conflicts before the aliens arrived. She understood that large armies moved slowly and required constant communication between commanders and frontline troops. If she could disrupt Vorthon command structures, she might be able to turn their size advantage into a weakness that human forces could exploit. The breakthrough came when Dr. Min-Ho Choi shared his analysis of captured Vorthon communication equipment. The aliens used a rigid hierarchy where every decision had to be approved by higher-ranking officers. Individual ship commanders could not adapt to changing battle conditions without permission from their superiors. This inflexibility had served the Vorthons well when fighting species that used similar military doctrines, but humans fought differently. Captain Soo Jin-yoon proved Yoonji's theory during a battle near the asteroid belt. Instead of attacking the largest Vorthon ships, she targeted their command vessels, first using hit-and-run tactics that prevented the aliens from coordinating their response. When the command ship was destroyed, the remaining alien vessels continued following their original orders even when those orders no longer made sense. The human pilots exploited this confusion by changing their attack patterns every few minutes. Vorthon gunners would adjust their targeting systems to hit fast-moving fighters, only to find themselves facing slow-moving bombers. When they adapted to destroy bombers, the humans switched back to fighters. The aliens could not keep up with rapid tactical changes because they needed permission to modify their battle plans. Commander Hyun-woo watched the battle from New Seoul Station and realized that humans possessed a crucial advantage over their enemies. Human commanders at every level could make independent decisions based on changing circumstances. A fighter pilot could become a bomber pilot if the situation required it. A cargo ship captain could ram an enemy vessel without asking for permission. This flexibility confused the Vorthons, who expected their enemies to follow predictable patterns. Da-Yun Lee had been working for 2 weeks to solve a different problem. Human weapons could damage Vorthon ships, but they could not penetrate the strongest alien armor without using nuclear warheads. She needed to find a way to increase the effectiveness of conventional weapons so that human forces could fight longer battles without running out of atomic missiles. The solution came from studying how Vorthon energy shields worked. The aliens generated protective barriers around their ships, using technology that was far more advanced than anything humans had developed. But Da-Yun discovered that the shields were designed to deflect energy weapons, not physical projectiles. A simple metal rod fired at high velocity could pass through Vorthon defenses and strike the hull directly. Da-Yun modified human railguns to fire dense metal projectiles at incredible speeds instead of explosive shells. The new ammunition cost almost nothing to produce but could punch holes through Vorthon armor that would have required nuclear warheads to penetrate. She shared her discovery with Admiral Bo-Ra Kim, who immediately ordered all human ships to be retrofitted with the improved weapons. Woo Jin Lee had become a hero to human forces after ramming his cargo ship into a Vorthon destroyer during the early days of the war. His sacrifice had inspired thousands of volunteers to join the resistance, but it had also taught military planners valuable lessons about alien ship design. Vorthon vessels were heavily armored on the outside, but vulnerable to internal explosions that could trigger chain reactions. The new strategy involved teams of volunteers who would pilot small, fast ships loaded with explosives directly into the docking bays and landing ports of alien vessels. These suicide attacks required incredible courage, but they could disable ships that were hundreds of times larger than the human craft involved. The Vorthons began to fear human kamikaze pilots, who seemed to appear from nowhere and strike at unexpected targets. Admiral Thexkar realized that his forces were losing the initiative in battles throughout the solar system. Human tactics had evolved from desperate defensive actions to coordinated offensive strikes that targeted specific weaknesses in Vorthon formations. Worse, the humans seemed to study alien combat methods during active battles and develop countermeasures in real time. The most disturbing development was how quickly human technology was advancing. Captured Vorthon equipment was being reverse-engineered and incorporated into human weapons within days of being recovered. The primitives, who should have surrendered immediately, were now fielding hybrid technologies that combined human innovation with alien engineering principles. Dr. Min-Ho Choi led the effort to understand and duplicate Vorthon technology. His teams worked around the clock to analyze alien computers' navigation systems and weapon components. They could not fully recreate the most advanced Vorthon devices, but they could adapt alien principles to improve human equipment. The results were ships and weapons that neither species could have built alone. The first hybrid human Vorthon vessel was completed 3 weeks after the war began. The ship used human engines and life support systems combined with alien armor and energy shields. It was not as advanced as a pure Vorthon warship, but it was far superior to anything in the original human fleet. More importantly, it could be built using materials and manufacturing techniques that humans already possessed. Captain Tae-Ho Shin commanded the hybrid vessel during its first combat mission against a Vorthon patrol squadron. The aliens were expecting to fight primitive human ships with limited armor and weapons. Instead, they faced a vessel that could absorb their attacks and return fire with weapons that used their own technology against them. The psychological impact was as important as the tactical advantage. The battle lasted only 20 minutes before the Vorthon squadron retreated. For the first time since the war began, alien forces had withdrawn from a fight they could have won through sheer numbers. The hybrid ship had proven that humans could not only copy Vorthan technology, but improve upon it by combining alien engineering with human creativity and adaptability. General Yun-Ji Park used intelligence gathered from these battles to plan Operation Wildfire, the largest human offensive of the war. Instead of defending Earth and its colonies, human forces would attack Vorthan positions throughout the solar system simultaneously. The aliens would be forced to divide their attention between multiple targets and would not be able to concentrate their superior firepower effectively. The operation began at dawn on the fourth week of the war, when human fleets emerged from hidden bases and struck at 17 different Vorthan installations. Admiral Bo-Ra Kim led the main assault against the alien flagship, while smaller forces attacked supply convoys, communication relays, and isolated patrol vessels. The Vorthans found themselves fighting separate battles across millions of miles of space. Commander Yun-Woo coordinated support operations from New Seoul Station, which had become the primary communication hub for human forces. His engineers had managed to tap into Vorthan communication networks, allowing human commanders to monitor alien troop movements and intercept enemy orders. This intelligence advantage proved crucial in predicting where the aliens would deploy their reserves. The most successful part of Operation Wildfire was Captain Soo Jin-yoon's raid on a Vorthan supply depot hidden in the rings of Saturn. Her squadron captured intact alien vessels loaded with advanced weapons and technology that human scientists had never seen before. More importantly, they rescued prisoners from dozens of species that the Vorthan Empire had conquered over the past century. The rescued aliens revealed shocking information about the true nature of the Vorthan Empire. They were not the apex predators they appeared to be, but rather servants of beings called the Devourers, who ruled from a hidden location somewhere beyond the edge of the galaxy. The Vorthans collected resources and populations for their masters, who consumed psychic energy generated by intelligent life forms. Dr. Min-Ho Choi interviewed the rescued aliens and learned that the Devourers had been slowly consuming entire civilizations for thousands of years. Species that surrendered to the Vorthan Empire were transported to processing facilities where their life force was extracted and transmitted to the Devourer homeworld. The bombing of Earth cities had been intended to weaken human psychic defenses and make the population easier to harvest. This revelation changed everything about how humans viewed the war. They were not fighting for territory or resources, but for the survival of consciousness itself. Surrender would not mean slavery, but complete annihilation of human thought and creativity. Every person who died in battle was one less mind that could be harvested by creatures who fed on intelligence and imagination. Admiral Thexkar received emergency orders from his superiors, demanding immediate resolution of the Earth situation. Io, Dr. So-young. Oh had spent her career studying how different species thought and behaved, but nothing had prepared her for analyzing the minds of beings from another world. As a xenopsychologist, she was tasked with understanding Vorthan mental processes and finding psychological weaknesses that human forces could exploit. Her work had seemed purely theoretical until the war began, and her research became a matter of life and death for every human in the solar system. So-young worked in a secure facility beneath the Korean peninsula, where she interviewed captured Vorthan soldiers and analyzed alien communication patterns. She discovered that the Vorthans operated as a collective intelligence where individual thoughts were shared among all members of their species. This hive mind structure made them incredibly efficient at coordinating large-scale operations, but it also created vulnerabilities that humans could target. The breakthrough came when So-young realized that human unpredictability was literally painful to Vorthan consciousness. Their minds were designed to process orderly information streams and logical decision trees when exposed to chaotic human behavior patterns. The aliens experienced something equivalent to severe headaches that disrupted their ability to think clearly. Human creativity was a weapon that could be used against the Vorthan hive mind. Admiral Bo-Ra Kim received So-young's report just as human forces were preparing for the final assault on the Vorthan flagship. The quantum disruptor would fire in 4 hours unless they could capture or destroy the weapon, but So-young had discovered a way to disable Vorthan defenders without using conventional weapons. If human forces could generate enough psychological chaos, they might be able to confuse the aliens long enough to reach the quantum disruptor. The plan required every human ship to broadcast random signals on frequencies that the Vorthon hive mind used for internal communication. Music, poetry, mathematical equations, and even children's games would be transmitted simultaneously to create a cacophony of illogical information that would overwhelm alien mental defenses. The Vorthons would be temporarily stunned while human boarding parties captured their flagship. Captain Tae-ho Shin led the first wave of assault ships toward the massive Vorthon vessel that carried the quantum disruptor. His squadron included pilots from 12 different nations and colonies who had volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. Even if they succeeded in disabling the weapon, the Vorthon flagship carried enough firepower to destroy every human ship in the attack force. The psychological warfare began 30 minutes before the assault, when human communication specialists started broadcasting chaos directly into Vorthon networks. Classical symphonies mixed with heavy metal music, while mathematical proofs were interrupted by nursery rhymes and cooking recipes. The aliens tried to filter out the noise, but their collective consciousness could not ignore the stream of chaotic information flooding their minds. Commander Hyun-woo watched from New Seoul Station as Vorthon ships began flying erratic patterns around their flagship. The aliens were clearly struggling to maintain coordination as human chaos signals disrupted their hive mind connections. Some Vorthon vessels collided with each other, while others drifted aimlessly through space as their crews lost the ability to make coherent decisions. Da-Yun Lee had spent the past week modifying human transport ships to carry boarding parties directly into the Vorthon flagship. The vessels were essentially flying bombs designed to punch through alien armor and deposit teams of soldiers inside enemy corridors. Most of the ships would be destroyed during the insertion process, but a few might succeed in delivering their human cargo to critical areas of the alien vessel. The first boarding ship was piloted by Young-Suk Park, a former test pilot who had volunteered after his family was killed in the alien bombing of Seoul. His transport carried 20 soldiers armed with weapons designed specifically for fighting in the confined spaces of alien ships. They knew they would probably die, but they also knew that their sacrifice might save Earth from the quantum disruptor. Young-Suk's ship penetrated 3 layers of Vorthon armor before exploding in a corridor deep inside the flagship. The blast killed him instantly, but the soldiers he carried survived and began fighting their way toward the quantum disruptor chamber. They faced Vorthon warriors who were 8 feet tall and armed with energy weapons, but the aliens were disoriented by the psychological chaos flooding their communications networks. More boarding parties reached the Vorthon flagship as the assault continued. Human soldiers found themselves fighting in corridors designed for beings twice their size, but they used their smaller stature to their advantage by moving through maintenance shafts and air ducts that the aliens could not access. The Vorthons were forced to split their attention between external threats and internal invaders. Dr. Min-ho Choi had provided the boarding teams with detailed maps of Vorthon ship layouts based on his analysis of captured vessels. He knew that the quantum disruptor would be located in the most heavily protected section of the flagship, surrounded by multiple layers of security systems and guard posts. Reaching the weapon would require the soldiers to fight through hundreds of alien defenders, while the disruptor continued charging toward full power. Captain Hye-jin Moon commanded the boarding party that came closest to reaching the quantum disruptor chamber. Her team of 15 soldiers had fought through 6 levels of the Vorthon flagship, leaving a trail of alien bodies behind them. They were only 50 meters from their target when they encountered the flagship's commander and his personal guard, unit armed with the most advanced weapons in the Vorthon arsenal. The battle in the corridor outside the disruptor chamber lasted 20 minutes and cost the lives of 12 human soldiers, but Hye-jin and her 2 surviving teammates managed to plant explosives on the chamber door. The blast opened a hole in the armored barrier but also triggered automatic defenses that sealed off the entire section. The 3 humans were trapped inside with the quantum disruptor and a dozen Vorthon technicians. Admiral Thexkar realized that his flagship was being overrun by human boarding parties, but he could not divert resources to fight the invaders without weakening his defenses against the external attack. The quantum disruptor was less than 2 hours from full charge, and he needed to keep human ships away from the weapon until it could fire. If Earth was destroyed, the invasion of human space would be complete, regardless of how many soldiers died on his flagship. Captain Sujin Yoon led a squadron of fighter craft in desperate attacks against the Vorthon flagship's weapon systems. Her pilots knew they could not destroy the massive vessel, but they might be able to damage its defenses enough to help the boarding parties reach their objectives. The fighters dove through forests of defensive fire, trading their lives for minor damage to alien systems. General Yoon Ji Park monitored the battle from her command center and realized that the assault was failing. Too many human ships had been destroyed and too few boarding parties had reached critical areas of the Vorthon flagship. The quantum disruptor would fire in 90 minutes, and there was no way to evacuate Earth's population in the time remaining. Humanity needed a miracle to survive the next 2 hours. The miracle came from an unexpected source when the rescued alien prisoners contacted Admiral Bo-Ra Kim with crucial information about Vorthon technology. They had worked as slaves in alien factories for decades and knew how to sabotage Vorthon equipment without triggering automatic safety systems. If human forces could reach specific control nodes, they could overload the quantum disruptor and turn it into a weapon against the Vorthon fleet. Captain Hee-Jin Moon received the sabotage instructions through her radio, just as Vorthon technicians tried to activate emergency protocols to protect the quantum disruptor. She and her 2 surviving soldiers fought a running battle through the weapon chamber while following complex technical procedures that they barely understood. One wrong move would trigger an explosion that would vaporize both the Vorthon flagship and every human ship within 1,000 kilometers. The sabotage required precise timing and careful coordination between multiple control systems. Hae Jin's teammate Corporal Dongmin Yu sacrificed his life to hold off Vorthon guards while she accessed the main control console. Her other teammate, Sergeant Mi Kyung Seo, provided covering fire until she was killed by an alien energy blast. Hae Jin found herself alone in the quantum disruptor chamber with 60 minutes until the weapon fired. Following instructions from the rescued prisoners, Hae Jin began the delicate process of reversing the disruptor's targeting parameters. Instead of destroying Earth, the weapon would create a quantum cascade that would tear apart every Vorthon ship in the solar system. The process required her to manually adjust hundreds of settings while Vorthon reinforcements tried to break down the sealed chamber door. Admiral Thexkar detected the unauthorized access to quantum disruptor controls and realized that the human boarding party had reached the weapon chamber. He could remotely destroy the disruptor to prevent sabotage, but that would also eliminate his only chance to complete the conquest of Earth. The Devourers would execute him for failing to deliver the human population, but they would also kill him for destroying their primary harvesting tool. The quantum disruptor fired exactly on schedule, but instead of destroying Earth, it created a cascade of destruction that tore through the Vorthon fleet like a wave of annihilation. Admiral Thexkar watched his flagship's view screen fill with brilliant white light as neighboring ships simply ceased to exist at the molecular level. The weapon that was supposed to harvest human consciousness had become humanity's salvation and the Vorthon Empire's doom. Captain Hee-Jin Moon died when Vorthon soldiers finally broke through the control room barriers, but her sacrifice had saved billions of human lives. The quantum cascade spread through space at the speed of light, consuming every alien vessel it encountered. Within 10 minutes, the entire Vorthon invasion force had been reduced to clouds of subatomic particles drifting through the solar system. Admiral Bo-Ra Kim stood in her command center and watched the impossible happen. Humanity had defeated an empire that had conquered 47 worlds and eliminated 15 species. The primitives who should have surrendered immediately had turned the galaxy's most advanced weapons against their creators. But victory came with a terrible cost, as thousands of human ships and tens of thousands of brave soldiers had died to achieve this triumph. Commander Hyun-woo received damage reports from across the solar system as human forces began the long process of rebuilding. New Sol Station had survived the war, but many other installations had been destroyed or severely damaged. The human fleet was reduced to a fraction of its original size and would take years to rebuild. More importantly, humanity now knew that Earth was not alone in the universe and that other threats might be waiting among the stars. Dr. Min-ho Choi led teams of scientists in analyzing the wreckage of Vorthon ships scattered throughout the solar system. The alien technology was far more advanced than anything humans had developed, but it was not impossible to understand. With careful study and patient experimentation, human engineers might be able to reverse engineer Vorthon systems and incorporate them into Earth's defenses. The most important discovery came from the rescued alien prisoners who shared their knowledge of the galaxy beyond the solar system. They revealed the locations of Vorthon colonies and processing facilities where billions of intelligent beings were being held as prisoners or processed for consumption by the devourers. Humanity faced a choice between celebrating their victory and taking on the responsibility of liberating other species from alien tyranny. General Yunji Park presented the military options to world leaders during emergency sessions in every major capital. Humanity could fortify the solar system and hope that other threats would not find Earth, or they could take the fight to the enemy and attempt to destroy the infrastructure that supported galactic slavery. The decision would determine whether humans remained an isolated species or became active participants in galactic affairs. The debate lasted for weeks as politicians and military leaders weighed the risks of intervention against the moral imperative to help other species. Some argued that humanity was not ready for galactic warfare and should focus on defending Earth. Others insisted that the devourers would eventually return in greater numbers and that the only hope for long-term survival was to eliminate the threat at its source. Captain Taeho Shin had survived the final battle against the Vorthon flagship and was now one of the most experienced human commanders when it came to fighting alien technology. He volunteered to lead an expedition beyond the solar system to gather intelligence about devourer operations and assess the possibility of mounting rescue missions to liberated enslaved populations. His proposal was approved despite the enormous risks involved. The first human expedition to leave the solar system consisted of 12 ships built using hybrid human-Vorthon technology. Dr. Min-Ho Choi had managed to reverse engineer alien faster-than-light drives that could carry human vessels across interstellar distances in weeks rather than centuries. The ships were armed with weapons based on Vorthon designs, but modified to be more effective against alien defenses. Captain Soo Jin-yoon commanded one of the expedition ships and led a squadron of fighters designed for long-range reconnaissance missions. Her pilots had learned to fight Vorthon technology during the war, and now they would test their skills against whatever defenses protected alien colonies. The mission was expected to last 6 months, and might result in the loss of all expedition ships if they encountered superior forces. Dayun Lee had spent months modifying human ships to operate in alien environments where the laws of physics might work differently. Vorthan space was filled with artificial constructs and energy fields that could damage or destroy vessels not designed to handle exotic matter interactions. Her engineering teams had developed protective systems based on captured alien technology, but they would not know if the modifications worked until the expedition reached its destination. The expedition's first target was a Vorthan processing facility located in a star system 30 light-years from Earth. According to the rescued prisoners, the facility contained millions of beings from dozens of species who were being prepared for consumption by the devourers. Intelligence suggested that the facility was lightly defended because the Vorthons had never faced serious resistance from liberated species. Captain Taeho Shin led the attack on the processing facility using tactics developed during the war for Earth. Human ships approached the target from multiple directions while broadcasting psychological chaos on frequencies used by alien communication networks. The Vorthon defenders were caught completely off guard by the appearance of human vessels in what they considered secure territory. The battle lasted only 4 hours before Vorthan defenses collapsed under coordinated human assault. The facility's weapons were designed to destroy large ships carrying enslaved populations, not to fight small, fast vessels carrying human soldiers. Captain Soo Jin-yoon's fighters penetrated the facility's docking bays and began landing liberation teams throughout the massive structure. Dr. So Young Oh had accompanied the expedition to help communicate with rescued species and assess their psychological condition after years or decades of captivity. She discovered that many of the prisoners had been modified by Vorthon technology to make them more compliant, but their essential consciousness remained intact. With proper medical treatment and psychological support, most of the rescued beings could eventually return to normal lives. The liberation of the processing facility revealed the true scope of devourer operations. The rescued prisoners included representatives from over 60 species, many of whom possessed advanced technology that had been incorporated into Vorthon systems. Some species had been enslaved for centuries, while others had been captured only. Recently, all of them shared a common hatred for their captors and a desire for revenge. Commander Hyun Woo received reports from the expedition through quantum communication systems that operated faster than light speed. The success of the first liberation mission proved that human forces could operate effectively in alien territory, but it also revealed that the Devourer Empire was far larger than anyone had imagined. Hundreds of facilities like the one they had attacked were scattered throughout the galaxy. The rescued aliens provided crucial intelligence about Devourer technology and revealed the location of their home system. The Devourers themselves were ancient beings of pure psychic energy who had abandoned physical form millions of years ago. They existed in a massive artificial construct that spanned an entire solar system and consumed the life force of intelligent species to maintain their immortal existence. Admiral Bo-Ra Kim realized that humanity was facing an enemy that was fundamentally different from anything they had encountered before. The Devourers could not be killed by conventional weapons because they had no physical bodies to destroy. They could only be defeated by beings who possessed strong enough psychic defenses to resist their mental attacks and creative enough minds to develop new forms of consciousness that the Devourers could not consume. Dr. Min-Ho Choi made a startling discovery while analyzing Devourer technology recovered from the processing facility. The ancient beings were not inherently evil, but rather desperate creatures who were slowly dying despite their artificial immortality. They consumed other species because they had forgotten how to generate their own psychic energy and believed that stealing consciousness from others was the only way to survive. The revelation changed everything about how humans viewed the conflict. The war was not just about defeating an enemy, but about finding a solution that would allow all species to coexist peacefully. Humanity had the opportunity to teach the Devourers how to create rather than consume and to transform the galaxy's greatest predators into its newest students. Captain Dong-Hyun Kim was a philosophy professor who had joined the military when the war began. His unique background made him the ideal person to attempt communication with beings who thought in ways that no physical species could understand. He volunteered to make contact with the Devourers despite knowing that the attempt would likely result in his death or the complete destruction of his consciousness. The final expedition to the Devourer home system included ships from every species that had been liberated from Vorthan processing facilities.